Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I'm just going to be demonstrating my process for creating foliage using Blender, Unity, and also creating the bush texture itself. So it's going to be a full guide on how I make the foliage for my next project. Also, I'm currently sick, so if I sound nasally or get more nasally throughout the video, that is why. And once again, this is my first tutorial ever, so I hope I'm doing good, but it might be a little off. And if you guys have any questions, just ask them in the comments and I should be able to respond. So the first thing we're going to want to start off doing is actually finding the bush texture itself. So you can just go on Google, search up bush texture, and just find one you like. Obviously, we're going to want an image that's an actual bush that's, shaped like a bush, not a just texture of a bush, as you'll see in many of these other images. So, after you find one you like, so I like this one, we're gonna copy and paste it into a software. The software I'm gonna be using in this video is called Paint.net, but really any image software is gonna work well. But I like this one. It's free. You just download it off Google, but it's very rudimentary. But it is good for the needs of this tutorial. So what we're gonna do is create a new file, and the sizes on it are automatically going to be set to the image on your clipboard. So once we make that new file, we can just paste the image in there and it'll already be the size of the image we downloaded. And so if we take our magic paintbrush tool and we click around, just I like clicking on the bush itself, and then we can press Control I, which inverts the selection, and so it'll select everything else that we haven't selected, and we can just press the delete key and delete the background. And you just want to shake this up a little bit. You can see in the video, like, just click around, try to get the most white out of the background deleted, just as much as possible, because we don't want those little bits in the final image. So from this point, I'm just making the image fit the theme of the game that I am actually working on and going to be importing this bush into. So the game, it has like a retro, it's retro pixelated style. So I'm just going to use the tools in Paint.net to make it fit into that style. So I use tools like the quantization, posterization, and I also usually downscale the image. You'll see me downscaling this image to a 256 by 256 texture file. So, it's just that little bit more pixelated, and also the file size is smaller. So that is good if you want to make a low storage game. And after we have our image all stylized and the background removed, right now the background is black because I had a separate black image behind it, so I could see what background still needed to be removed. But in the end, you'll see me getting rid of that black one, so we can just download the transparent background image. So yeah, we'll just download it, download it as a PNG, obviously, and yeah, we're gonna take that, and now we're gonna start modeling our bush in Blender. Once we get into Blender and we make a new file, just delete all the generic, starting parts and create a plane. Name the plane just, what your bush is going to be. So mine is bush 3 because I've already made 2 before. And rotate that plane so it is vertical so we can see it straight on and it's not like a floor. So from here, I just make a loop cut and delete the bottom half so the bottom is perfectly on the origin. And then we are going to make our actual material. I just call it bush texture, and we're going to make the base color of that material in image file. So we make the image file, and then we just open up that bush texture that we just downloaded. From here, I set the style of it to closest instead of linear, so it has that pixelated look and it's not like a blurred image. So if we go into the shading tab, you can see we have our nodes here, the image, the principle, and the diffuse or whatever. So we're going to take the alpha of our image and we're going to plug it into the alpha of the principal, and that will make the background removed. So we have our bush on the plane, and that is our material. Now heading back into the modeling tab, we can set our view mode to show textures. So we can set that to, I forget what it's called, but it's just that button in the top right to make it so our textures are actually shown on our plane while we edit it. So we can just make this a square, so I just increase the height by 1, so it is a 1 by 1 plane, and we can re-unwrap that texture. So now that is on our plane just like that. For our LODs, I'm going to save just this plane right here because it is going to be our billboard LOD, which is just a image of the bush itself. So we're going to set that to the side, and we can name that bush 3 or just bush billboard. And then we can start modeling our bush so it actually has that 3D look. So I just take the plane and I rotate it a few times around so it is a full 360 circle, not just a plane. So you'll see me doing that here. And after I do that, I set the image back. I rotate it back so it's on its side. And then you can scale it around a little bit, and now this is just going to make the bush look more full and not just look like those rotated planes. So it actually has that layering to it. So I normally put 2 or 3 of these just to make it look full. And as you can see here, this is our bush, and we can set the material roughness to full so it's not shiny and it looks like uh, actual foliage. From here, I'm gonna duplicate the whole bush and I'm gonna set it to the left side, and this bush is going to be our high definition bush, which is going to be the most detailed LOD in our LOD scale. So the next bush we're gonna make is the medium LOD, and for this LOD, I'm just gonna delete a few planes, rearrange them so it uses less planes, but still looks the same from a slightly longer distance. This final step in our bush modeling process, it's optional, but I like doing it so the bush looks like more variety instead of just like a stagnant like actual like game asset. So I just take some of the planes and I just rotate them at random so it looks more natural instead of stagnant. Now, after we do that, our bush models are actually complete. We have all three, the high definition, the medium definition, and the billboard asset, which is our, low definition. So now we can actually import these assets into Unity itself. Start off, we're actually going to want to export these. So I export them as FBXs, which is just a simple, 3D modeling asset we can import into Unity. So I'm going to create a folder for them. Just an example, I'm going to name each one their respective one. So bush high definition, bush medium definition, and bush billboard. And for our export settings, I already have a preset, but we're going to make sure you export in the FBX settings. We're going to set it to selected objects only. And, with that, obviously, we're going to only select the ones we're exporting at a time. So export each one separately. Well, you could download them all as one, but for the simplicity of this tutorial, and it's also just what I like to do, I download each model separately so I can just move them around easily in the Unity itself. But it might actually be easier to download them just all as a group model. But I'm going to download them separately. So this is the Unity project I'm going to be importing the assets to. You can see I've already made a tree and two other bushes, and here is a just me demonstrating the actual LODs themselves. So you can see as we go closer, they become more detailed, and then the farther away the camera is, the less detailed, and if we go really far, it turns into a billboard. At this point, I'm now importing all the assets into a folder in our Unity project. So I just take each one and I import them in. Also, import the texture we made earlier on, and then we're going to create a material out of that texture to put onto the bushes themselves. After placing the bush models, we can assign our newly made material to each one so it actually applies to the models. And for our material, we're going to change some of the settings to make it actually look like a bush. I like to set the smoothness all the way down so there's no reflectivity in the material. And then what I do is I set the rendering phase to both sides instead of the front, because right now if you look at the back side of one of the planes, it just doesn't render. But if we set it to both, it's going to render from all sides, which is going to complete that fullness of the bush. From there, we can also turn on alpha clipping, which is actually going to remove the background based on the alpha of the image. So right now you can see it's black, but that's actually just the alpha. So once we turn on alpha clipping, it's going to remove that black background, and then we're going to actually have that bush texture. What I also like to do with the style of my game is I set the texture of the image to point instead of bilinear, which that's just going to make it so it's actually pixelated instead of slightly blurred, which you get with small texture files. From this point, we're actually going to start creating the prefab and LOD groups that we can place around so it's an actual bush and not just a few images. So we're going to create a child to one of the bushes, and we're going to make that the parent instead, so the origin of our new empty game object is at the bush. And so we can set all our bush prefabs, or bush models, into our empty as a child, and we're going to set their location position to 0 for each one. So it's at the center of the empty game child, which you can also name bush or whatever you want your prefab to be named. Now on this new empty game object with our models inside of it, we're going to add an LOD group component, and so you can see all the settings here. This is everything we're going to need to actually make that shifting of rendering based on distance and percentage of screen space. So you want to make a renderer for each of these groups, as you can see, and then apply each one. So our LOD group 0 is going to be our high definition, our LOD 1 is going to be our medium definition, and then our last LOD group is going to be our billboard. So you can see here, the closer we get to the model, the more detailed it is, and the farther we get, the less detailed, and if we go far, it gets to be a billboard, and if we go really far, it's just cooled completely, which means it's not rendered. Also, with our LED group, you can see at our top with the value up there, I set it to crossfade, so it smoothly transitions in between each group instead of sharply just instantly switching to the next one. We can adjust these sliders of each LOD spot, and that will change how far the switch between the LOD groups actually happens. So just make these sliders whatever fits your game, whatever fits your style, whatever you want, and that will change the visuals based on distance. Also, you see the slider under each LOD group section. It's I forget what it's called exactly, but that slider is going to change the transition value of our crossfade. So if you set it to 1, it's going to completely start crossfading from the moment the last LED group switches. And if you, I like setting it to like 0.2 to 0.5, so there's still that smooth transition, but it doesn't look, too smooth to the point where you can see all renders at once, because that just defeats the whole purpose. Now, going in game and walking over to the bush, you can see if we go farther back from the bush, it slowly gets less detailed. And we can see if we go far, it gets turned into a billboard. And there we go. Yeah, that is our LOD groups. But there is actually a slight problem with this, and that's that our billboard does not rotate with the player. So if we go from a side view and go backwards, it actually just disappears because we're facing the side of the plane and not the front of it. So that's what we're going to fix next, and we're going to fix this through a mono behavior C# script. Before we make the script, you're going to want to create a parent on the billboard model, and so just name that billboard or something. And then I already have an LOD billboard script created, so I'm just going to open that and I can show you what I do to make it rotate to the player. So once we open our C# script, you can see at the bottom that is my code for my game. It references my player movement script to get the player's position. But for simplicity of the tutorial, we can just create a transform, and that is going to be our target transform. So that's going to be our player. It's going to be what the billboard wants to rotate to. So in our update method, we're going to make sure we have that target transform and it's not null. So once we make sure that for each frame, we can actually set the rotation of it to go to that target. So we're going to create a direction vector 3, and that equation for the new vector 3 is going to be our target transform, which will be our player, minus our source transform, which will be the transform of the billboard itself. And then with that, we can normalize that so it is on a 0 to 1 scale. So after we have that direction value, we can set the y to equal 0, just so the billboard isn't shifting like up and down based on our y value. And this just makes it easier to like look from far away, so it doesn't look weird from a top point of view. And then after we set that direction dot y to 0, we can set the transform of the game object to a quaternion dot look rotation, and then put that direction in that field. Now that is just going to be the actual line that rotates the billboard towards in the direction of that target object, which in this case is our player. So putting that LOD billboard scripts on our billboard parent, we can see that if we go in the game, it might still be a little off, and that's because our billboard and our billboard parent, the rotation is off, so it's rotating towards the player, but it's rotating the side of the billboard towards the player and not the front. And this is just going to make it so no matter what, we can't see the billboard. So to change that, we can adjust the billboard model in the billboard parent. We can adjust the rotation by 90 degrees. It's going to be different for each person and how you exported the model. But you can see here I set the Y to 90 and I also set the Z to 90 so it faces the player and not the side. And make sure you also do this in a non-play mode. So you're going to see I do it in play mode, but that is not going to save when I go out of play mode. So just make sure it saves. So now it's going to be always rotating towards the player, as you can see here. And if we go closer, it gets more detailed. And so, yeah, that is basically our bush done, but we can make it into a prefab so we can spawn it around the map wherever. So we can just drag that model into our asset menu, and that's going to create a prefab of the object. And from here, whatever changes you make to this prefab are going to be changes to the actual bushes in the scene. So you can adjust your LOD groups and distances from here, and you can just adjust whatever you want from here, and it will assimilate into all the other ones. Also, in our prefab, we can lower the Y value of each model. So once we place the prefab, it'll actually the ground where it meets the ground is actually going to be where the bush starts and not like floating above it. And that's just because we modeled our bush so it starts a little above the ground and not directly on the bottom of the plane. Now that we have our bush prefab, we can just place these around the scene. We can scale them however we want, and it is good. That is our finished product. So hopefully it looks good in your guys' scene. But I also have a lot of post-processing effects on at the moment, so it is more stylized than it would be for probably you. So that's the end of this tutorial. I hope it helped you guys. This is just my process. Like I was saying, it might not be the best process, but it is what I currently do when making my game. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope it works out for you guys, and I really appreciate you guys for watching till the end of this video, and yeah. Also, by the way, the game I'm working on is going to be my next title. It's called Rotting Grief. At least that's the work in progress name. I have a story set out for it, and I've been working on it a lot lately. So I'm hoping to get that out by early 2026. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and have a good one.